Hello dear viewer, in this video I'll be going over some basic writing advice which aims to do a few things. Those being, helping you keep track of your writing during the writing process, creating a coherent story, explaining some of the actual depths of writing as a skill so you can better understand it, and give you a framework from which to create a story, characters and whatnot. In this video I'll be going over the following sections. 1. Character sheets. 2. Timeline/plot graphs, plot threads, arcs and pacing. 3. Continuity noting and setting rules. And fourthly, your approach to writing. These 4 sections will give you the necessary framework, context and ideas to begin writing and construct something cohesive while doing so. And each section in this video will have its own chapter so you can listen to it again if you need to. And with that laid out, now to begin. Section 1. Character sheets. Character sheets hold all the essential information on your characters and are a great way to keep a track of it. But how much you put on one is entirely relative to how important the character is in the story and how much time they get in said story. Generally speaking, the more complex a character is, the more time it takes to really show them effectively, which is why you also need to consider pacing, which we'll go over later. Characters, however, come in varying depths, those generally being 1, 2 and 3rd dimensional. A one-dimensional character does not necessitate a character sheet. They lack depth and never seem to learn or grow and often have a limited role, usually doing just one thing and that's about it, these usually being background characters. A two-dimensional character, however, can have a character sheet, albeit that's best reserved for if you want to develop them more into a three-dimensional character. Often, a two-dimensional character has some traits going on, things they like, dislike, etc., albeit they may or may not learn or change. However, they lack anything deeper than this, no reasoning, no motive, just surface level stuff. This typically being side characters, not too essential to the plot. Then we have a 3D or 3rd dimensional character. This is where a character sheet is best used. These are your main characters in a story. They will often have personality, learn, change, have preferences, motives, reasoning, strengths, weaknesses, goals and much more, all of which is stacked in layers, giving them depth. Even more so if things are connected in a way that makes those traits more meaningful, which is why giving them more screen time to showcase all of it is usually the case, be it showcased directly or indirectly via implication. Basically, the more complex a character is, the more time they need to show it, and complex characters are often what leads a story. But in regards to the actual character sheet itself, I like to give mine the following sections in this exact order. Personality traits, personal likes, personal dislikes, strengths, weaknesses, skills, which for clarification skills are things they've learned to do, goals, worldview if applicable, and a notes section at the bottom for stuff that does not fit these, which is usually where I put information on their character arc, or I put all their arcs on one thing so I can track them all separately. However, arcs are something I'll better cover later. Anyway, all of these sections, from personality to even the notes, if you use them in your story organically and put them together right, are what truly makes a character have depth. However, making a character stand out and be memorable is an entirely different thing, which will vary greatly depending on your writing genre, style and audience, so I have to recommend you learn about that yourself elsewhere. This section is just a framework for making characters of whatever complexity you wish for whatever you plan to write. Anyway, moving on. Section 2. Timeline/plot graphs, plot threads, arcs and pacing. Starting this section off, when you write a story it's good to have an idea of how it starts, ends and the critical points between. With these you can form a timeline/plot graph, which is a good base to work from when writing. Usually I draw this out on a sheet of paper as a line with points marked out and named accordingly. I get all the major events in place and it will generally start to look like a single route on a subway or underground train map. Then from there I progressively refine the timeline and add more events and things connecting them together. But as you refine your timeline you also need to consider your characters, their personalities, how will they change, how will they end up, what's going to happen to them and such. Like how are they going to react to events in the story. This is where you add in plot threads, best marked out on the sheet with a different colour. These allow you to keep track of how characters change in response to events in the story and how far into it you are, essentially tracking the characters and their arcs you have planned out in comparison to the plot. This is a great framework for managing your story's pacing so it's neither too fast or too slow. This also stops plot threads getting forgotten and ultimately never getting chased up. For example, two lovers plan to go on a date but they get distracted and it just never gets followed up at all or mentioned again. Having plot threads mapped out would prevent this and keep the aforementioned pacing on beat. Speaking of pacing, if your story is in chapters, try to keep them all generally around the same length if you can. Albeit they do not need to be the exact same, just similar. And with that, moving on to section 3. Continuity noting and setting rules. As you write your story and set up the world's logic, you need to keep continuity notes on how it all operates as they keep the world building consistent. For example, in a traditional medieval fantasy setting, dragons are expected to breathe fire. You could make them breathe ice instead, however. But if you want a dragon to do both, you need to set up rules on how this is possible and how it works. This can be done in a variety of ways. For example, the dragons who breathe fire and ice are two different species, hybrids being maybe able to do both. Dragons can just do this, having two organs for liquid nitrogen and napalm, one existing to counter the other. The dragons harness elemental magic and project it as a beam, enabling fire and ice. However, by proxy, this means any magic can be shot out unless rules set up in universe say otherwise. This, however, situation is an example of why continuity notes and planning out the world logic are important. Otherwise, you enable plot and logic holes that readers may notice, especially if the world logic is crucial to the plot. To fix this, for example, you can establish rules on what types of magic a dragon can use and why, using methods like this. Certain species of dragon can only access specific types of magic. Some types of magic are totally unattainable to a dragon as they lack enough control to use it or lack the intelligence to. Or they're just incompatible with dragon biology. So it'd be generally stuff like this, but I'm pretty sure you get the idea. Also, another good reason to keep continuity notes is character inventories. For example, a fantasy setting where every item they have can be useful in some way. If the characters have plenty of items for various situations, keeping a noted inventory and updating it as you go is a great way to keep things consistent. Another good thing to do for continuity is to map out rooms and locations with illustrations so that you can keep track of your characters as they move through them, which is especially good to have if it's a repeat location, part of a larger building, or they need to split up. Mapping out a location is also good for giving the location a sense of scale and making sure everything makes sense layout wise, and it's also good to make sure that rooms don't overlap with one another. And with that, now to move on to section 4, your approach to writing. When it comes to actually sitting down and writing, there are a few issues you may face. First is actually getting started. Starting to actually write is the most intimidating part. You may have no idea where to start. So, think about it for a bit, come up with a few ideas and write them out. Read over them and pick the one you feel works best with what you plan to write. This gives you a solid starting place to work from. Second is burnout. Given enough time writing, you will inevitably feel burnout, feeling stuck or a loss of creativity and inspiration. At this point, take a break and try one of the following. Look at the source material that inspired you if applicable. Try something different for a bit to refresh yourself. Take a short break to focus on something else, or maybe take a shower to clear your mind and relax your body. But do not take a break for too long, come back to it and try again once you have an idea of what to do. If this works out, you should be able to continue. Third is time. You may not actually have the time to sit down and write. In this case, try to find time. Setting up a schedule or adjusting one that already exists is a good way to go about this. Fourth is distractions. Generally, it's a good idea to set up where you're writing in a way where you'll suffer the least distractions. Sometimes for some people, putting on music will help too, especially if the music fits the tone of whatever you're writing. If anything, I advise listening to music that fits the tone of a scene while writing it, as to put you in a mindset similar to what is happening. And fifth is a lack of reference. Sometimes a scene you come up with may read differently from what you imagined. In this case, I advise you carefully reread what you wrote every now and then and let the image of what's happening naturally take form. From this, you can make adjustments, turning it into whatever you envisioned for the scene. And with that, we conclude the fourth section. To summarize the contents of this video: 1. Character sheets help organize and bring out the best in your characters. 2. Having a timeline events mapped out will keep things in order. 3. Keeping notes on continuity will prevent you from making serious mistakes. 4. Actually writing can pose challenges, but with the right push you can get through them. As I said at the start, each section in this video will have its own chapter, so you can listen to it again if you need to. But otherwise, that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching or listening, and if you wish to stick around for future videos, subscribe and enable notifications. Also, likes and sharing will help this video out immensely. Anyway, thank you for your time, Goodbye.